Port-au-Prince's schools were once shelters from chaos. Now, classrooms are strongholds, and childhood is traded for the logic of guns. In 2024, armed groups seized control of 85% of the capital, turning schoolyards into battlegrounds and students into targets and soldiers. 1 million people have been driven from their homes as fear replaces education. How armed groups took Port-au-Prince's schools isn't just about gangs. It's about how a city lost its children and what could stop an entire generation from vanishing inside this war. But how did it come to this? And what does it take to break the cycle before it's too late? Fida was 10 years old when her school became a trap. One morning in 2024, gunfire echoed through the neighborhood. She ran barefoot, heart pounding, until she reached the rooftop, alone and terrified. For an hour, she crouched in the sun, listening to the sounds of men shouting and doors splintering below. Her mother found her there, shaking and crying, after the shooting stopped. That was the last day Fida set foot in a classroom. Now, like hundreds of thousands of children in Port-au-Prince, she wakes each day to uncertainty, her backpack gathering dust, her future on hold. Childhood here is measured not in years, but in moments of fear. What does it do to a child to lose even the memory of feeling safe? Port-au-Prince has become a city carved into zones of fear and control. Since the assassination of Haiti's president in 2021, armed groups have filled the vacuum left by a broken government. Today, nearly 85% of the capital is under their command. What used to be neighborhoods filled with children walking to school or vendors calling out at markets are now divided by invisible borders. Crossing from one street to the next can mean stepping into hostile territory. Schools, clinics, and even playgrounds have been swallowed by these no-go zones, claimed as outposts or battlegrounds. Parents weigh every outing like a gamble. The city's map is shrinking block by block as armed coalitions redraw it to suit their needs. For families, the question isn't just which school to send a child to, it's whether any safe route still exists at all. Children disappear from the streets of Port-au-Prince, not just as victims but as new recruits. The rules of childhood have been rewritten by armed men who prowl displacement camps and market alleys, searching for easy targets. In the last year alone, recruitment of children into armed groups has surged by 70%. Some are lured with promises: a daily meal, a handful of cash, a sense of belonging where hunger and fear are constants. Others are trapped by threats, their families targeted if they refuse. 8-year-olds serve as lookouts or messengers. Older children are handed weapons or forced to guard checkpoints. Girls are often claimed as wives or pressed into labor. The collapse of schools leaves no safe routine, no barrier between a child and the street recruiter. For many, the first step into gang life is not a choice, but the only way to survive another day. In Port-au-Prince, the line between childhood and combat has all but vanished. Up to half of some armed groups now consist of children, boys and girls as young as 8, pressed into service as fighters, lookouts, or forced into roles no child should ever know. This is not an accident. It is the result of a city where over 1 million people have been driven from their homes, where more than 900 schools have closed their doors since January, and where the promise of safety or a meal can outweigh any memory of a classroom. With every school that falls, another barrier collapses. Armed groups are not just using children, they are remaking them into instruments of violence, creating a cycle that feeds on itself. The cost is measured in shattered futures and lost trust. In the past year alone, reports of sexual violence against children have increased tenfold. Childhood in Port-au-Prince is now a battleground, and the consequences are written on a generation. Mobile classrooms roll through battered neighborhoods, their sides painted with bright letters and hope. Inside, children gather for lessons and a meal, shielded for a few hours from the chaos outside. Trained counselors offer mental health support, listening to stories of loss that no child should have to tell. UNICEF and local partners deploy these safe spaces wherever families have fled. sometimes in church courtyards, sometimes under tarps. Young people are taking action too. Through U-Report, a youth-led network, they share warnings, organize aid, and push for their voices to be heard. Even here, resistance is possible. But every hour of safety, every lesson, depends on resources that never arrive fast enough. UNICEF and its partners stretch to cover more ground, but their appeals are met with silence or shortfalls. The gap between what is needed and what is funded grows wider each day, leaving hope on a knife's edge. By early 2024, armed groups controlled about 85% of Port-au-Prince, forcing the closure of over 900 schools and displacing more than 1 million people, half of them children. The assassination of Haiti's president in 2021 and the collapse of public security created a power vacuum that allowed these groups to target schools, recruit children, and destroy any sense of safety. Verified reports show that up to half of some armed groups are made up of children, while incidents of sexual violence against minors increased tenfold in just 1 year. Despite these facts, the true scope of ongoing child recruitment and the fate of many missing children remain undocumented. International and local efforts, like UNICEF's mobile classrooms and community reporting networks, provide some protection, but without sustained security and funding, these responses cannot match the scale of the crisis. The future of Haiti depends on what happens to its children now. Protecting them is not an afterthought. It is the foundation for any real recovery.